What's up, everyone? Before we begin tonight's story, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my friend, Author JoJo, whom I commissioned to write this story exclusively for this channel. JoJo is an amazing author, and if you enjoy this story, I suggest you check out his other works. Links in the description. I'd also like to thank my friend Dodge the Gray for joining me in this narration. She is a fantastic narrator herself and has an amazing channel. Links in the description. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe with notifications on. If you like the narration, leave a like. If you don't, leave a dislike. And with that, turn off the lights, listen to my voice, and just chill. I could feel my eyebrow furrow as I scanned the living room. Reaching my hand up, I dragged my fingernails across the back of my head. The coffee table was the subject of my ire, or rather the lack of a TV remote. Just moments ago, I had placed it on the table so I could get up and make a cup of coffee. By the time I had returned to the living room, it was gone. With coffee still in hand, I stepped over to the table and set it down. The waft of steam rising from the hot sludge melded with beams of light resting on the table. Stepping back, I knelt and looked under the table, considering it possible that I knocked it off while walking away. The carpet was clean of such a device, though. I could even see under the couch from where I was. Nothing there except a few dust bunnies.
Lose something, bud?
I heard her voice cut through the commercials playing on the TV. I stood back up to look at my wife, Sherry, standing behind the couch, resting one of her hands on the edge of the auburn fabric. "Yeah, the remote," I replied. She simply tilted her head and pointed her finger toward the coffee table. Turning around, I was surprised at the sudden emergence of the remote, resting on the table as it had never left. My words caught in my throat. There's no way I just didn't see it sitting there, right? I even put my coffee down right next to where it reappeared. It wasn't there just a second ago. Turning back to face Sherry, I must have been wearing my bewilderment like a glove. She offered a quaint smile in response.
What would you do without me?
I chuckled briefly, pushing the oddity out of my mind. I guess I'd be stuck watching Channel 5 News. Reaching over, I picked up the remote, feeling the glossy dark plastic in my hands. Pressing down on the button, I turned the TV off and watched the screen go dark. As I did, I could see myself in the reflection, but not her. I could see the couch and the front door behind it, but Sherry wasn't there. Quickly, I turned to face where she had been, and sure enough, just like the remote, she had vanished. "Sherry?" I said, soft-spoken to myself, feeling a little silly, but when I was met with a silence ever more punctuated with the TV off, I could feel my heart stir. "Sherry?" I said louder, booming my voice through the house.
What?
She replied, calling my attention to the kitchen.
Am I not allowed to have any?
She jested, holding up a cup freshly occupied by the coffee I brewed. She once again picked up on my expression and offered a gentler expression.
What's up with you?
Nothing. Sorry, I just... having trouble waking up, I guess. My words stuttered out. I was starting to feel silly, my mind abuzz. She rubbed my shoulder as she walked past me, an offering of support. Without a word, she walked up the stairs and was out of my sight. She always liked to sit near the window in our bedroom when she had her morning coffee, a creature of routine. I was almost relieved to see that my coffee was still sitting on the table right where I had left it. Picking it up, it had cooled off enough that I could take a few sips of it. Lifting the mug to my mouth, I let the caffeine spill down my throat, feeling the warmth hit my stomach. Normally, I'd sit down, but I absent-mindedly found myself standing in the living room, staring out the front window as I took one sip after another. As I set the cup down, I realized the remote was still in my hand and that I must have zoned out for a good few minutes there. Cautiously setting the remote down, I eyed it like I was expecting it to leap off the table and run away. Believing the remote would stay put, I backed away and relinquished my cup to the confines of the sink, rinsing the dark ring of brown from the bottom of the porcelain cup. The water filled the cup until spilling over the rim and onto the metal it rested on. Puddles of water reached out further until they connected with the other dishes the cup was surrounded by. The water rushing out from the cup quickly shifted away from the dark tint my coffee pressed on it. Placing the cup down in the sink, I heard a sudden crash from upstairs that stirred my attention, pulling my gaze back to the living room. My heart lurched forward from the sudden intrusion, and I stood for a moment, waiting for any sort of follow-up noise. "Everything okay?" My voice boomed into the house. A moment of silence passed, and just as I was about to start making my way upstairs, I heard Sherry's voice carry down the stairs.
Yeah, sorry. I just dropped my laptop.
My lips parsed, but before anything came out, she continued,
It's fine, though.
as if she could hear the words coming from my mouth before they took shape. We were always good about that, reaching into each other's heads, finishing a conversation before it began. Laughing to myself, I reached over, intending to quickly wash my hands before truly getting my day started. It was only out of the corner of my eye that I noticed it. Subtle enough that it stayed in the corner of my eye for a while, like I was refusing to turn my head and face what I was seeing. Rather, what I wasn't seeing. Eventually, I had to cave in, though, and observe the empty sink before me. It wasn't just that the cup I had put in there moments ago had vanished. They were all gone. The silverware and the few plates I told Sherry I would clean the night before, they were nowhere to be seen. I could practically feel my eyes glazing over, darting from one corner of the sink to another, as if expecting the dishes would suddenly reappear. My fingers, trembling as they may, plunged into a metal bowl, a further affirmation that it was as empty as my vision portrayed it to be. Backing away from the sink, like with a remote, I delved into my thoughts, trying to find an explanation. Hell, the sink didn't even look like it had a drop of water touch it. Backing far enough away from the sink, I felt my back bump against the refrigerator. The soft hum of it for a moment rattled my back. My mind flicked back to the remote. Like changing the channel, shifted between the empty sink and the presences of the remote. A remote that was no longer on the table. I could see the whole living room from where I was, and once again the table was empty. My breathing was getting heavy, feeling my chest rising and deflating. I became all too aware of my body. It felt like I was being wrapped in cellophane, tighter and tighter. The hum from the fridge, with such an awareness of my senses, I could feel when the hum stopped. Perhaps, I thought, the motor just kicked off. So my fingers, listless and daunted, traveled to my side and then back. I was so convinced that I would feel the cold metal finish of the refrigerator that for a moment I did. It was brief, but the nerves on my fingertips lit up with a chill, despite my hands traveling further than they would be able to if the fridge was still there. My body shivered all the same. I felt like they were hurried, but my steps slowly moved me back into the living room, turning just enough to see where my fridge was. It used to be. Instead of just a large open space, there wasn't a trace of it. No ring of dirt outlining the appliance or dust bunnies that would have collected under it. Like my memory of it having been there was just a lie. My memories of the dishes and the remote are all lies. Or I had forgotten them, and in kind, the world did too. My steps were unstable, and when my heel met with the carpet, I found myself falling backward. Out of instinct, I prepared myself to crash into the coffee table, though I was unsurprised when instead my palms met with the same carpet that had tripped me. In the middle of the room, I surveyed the living room. It looked like we were still in the process of moving in. All the things I had taken my eyes off of were all gone. The couch, the table, and the TV, just missing without a trace. Nothing. I could almost still see them like one picture burned on top of another, but with every blink, I was reminded that the object was gone. It was as if the second I took my eyes off of them, they ceased to exist. Then I realized how quiet the house was. Didn't me falling over make a noise? Staring at the stairs, hearing no signs of stirring, I could feel that cellophane pulling tight around my heart. Sherry? My voice trembled. The last time she called down the stairs to reply to me. That was the last thing I heard from her. That was only moments ago, though. Sherry? I cried louder, waiting for any semblance of life from upstairs to make itself known. Moving my body, I started getting up to my feet. I couldn't tell if I was crying out or if my voice was getting stuck in my throat. With my knees on the carpet, I yelled for her. This time belting out her name with everything my increasingly strained vocal cords would allow. As my throat clenched up, I heard a series of rapid thumping that quickly approached the stairway. Relief swelled in me as I saw her thin fingers clasping the mahogany rating before her face appeared looking down the steps.
What are you...
She took a quick moment to observe my state of me.
Oh my God, Andrew!
Her pitch quickly shifted, the concern painted in her words. I could see her eyes quickly taking in the scene before her as she began rushing down the stairs.
What happened?
She continued making her way down, hair still wet from the shower I presumably pulled her away from. "It's all gone," I whimpered out, feeling so confused and strange it was hard to get a proper handle on my emotions. "Everything is gone." My words weren't falling into place like they should have been.
Baby, I don't know what that means.
She carried herself over to me before bending down. She placed a finger on my forehead and pulled it back. I could see a small bead of red on the tip of her pointer finger. My blood.
Hey, it's okay. I'll get some paper towels and we'll clean up the table.
She started rising from her crouch. It dawned on me that she wasn't at all put off by the lack of our living room furniture. Was it all still there for her? Clean up the table? Where did the blood come from? If there is no table, then what did I cut myself on? As she stood up and started walking towards the kitchen, I thought about the dishes in the sink. My mind was so wrapped up in trying to figure out what was going on, I hadn't noticed that I raised my hand to grab Sherry's wrist. I could feel the corners of my eyelids nearly splitting open as I stared at her.
Andrew, I said let go.
Her voice was stern. I hadn't heard her telling me to let go of her. How long was I holding her? I could see the skin on her wrist was turning red.
You're scaring me.
The stern bass in her voice was looser and the words started to wobble. I could feel it in my heart, though. I couldn't let her out of my sight. My lips were moving, but I couldn't hear myself. Words spilling out, water over the rim of a coffee cup. Every so often, I would catch a drip of my explanation. I sounded crazy, I know I did, but I couldn't stop myself. I was frantic and scared, each word blurring into the next.
Okay. Andrew.
Sherry tried her best to quell my ravings, but she wasn't understanding. It was all over her face. She didn't believe a word I was saying.
I'm going to call someone. Okay? I can help you.
Soft. Her hand on top of mine was so soft. Help? Did I need help? Jesus, I was crying. Through the tears, I could see the kitchen behind her. No sign of life, just an empty, vacant space, ready for a house tour. No objects were scattered around the countertop or appliances awaiting dishes. My house, where I made a life with her, all of it was stripped to its barest form. My fingers uncurled from her wrists. Please, make it stop, I begged, holding my hands out in front of me, like I was waiting for some choir in church.
I'm just going to grab the phone.
She spoke to me like I was a scared child. With the blood on my forehead, maybe she thought I had hit it. That somehow my brain got knocked around and I was having a stroke or something. She walked into the kitchen. I kept my eyes on her the whole time. watching her hands reach over onto the wall where our phone should be. She grabbed it. I could see her fingers pressing down like she was mimicking someone using a telephone. Before long, she was speaking with her hand held at the side of her head. I couldn't hear her words. I don't think she wanted me to, but before long, she hung up the phone, reached into what would be the freezer, and rushed back over to me.
You're going to be okay, baby. I promise.
There was a chill against my forehead. Sudden cold needles pressing on the wound. Surely one of the ice bags we kept. I was sobbing. I could only tell by the feeling of the tears pulled against my cheeks. Every other sensation felt so numb. Every time I was forced to blink, I thought I'd open my eyes and she'd be gone, but she remained, holding me.
Come in.
She suddenly shouted, snapping me from my daze. I didn't dare turn my head to look, but I could hear the front door swinging open, and two male voices started to converse with her. Someone appeared in my view, and I quickly recognized the EMT uniform. My brain connected dots far faster than I could handle. The panic set in like a wildfire. They began trying to check my vitals and anything else their training instructed them to do. All the while, I did everything I could to get any bit of Sherry that I could in my line of sight. When one of the EMTs tried to turn my neck to check the sides of my head, I could feel the muscles in my neck resisting. I was telling them to stop, that I had to keep looking at her, that I had to stay with her. I was frantic. Of course, I was frantic. I didn't mean to do it. Just like when I had gripped her wrist, I felt my palms push against the EMT's chest. I could see his body fall back and react as if he was hitting our couch. Sherry had tears in her eyes at this point, too, begging me to just let them help.
Please.
How could I have possibly made her or anyone understand?
Please.
It made sense when I could feel my arms being manipulated against my will. I was hysteric, speaking nonsense of the head injury. If anything, from their point of view, I was a danger to myself. And when someone is like that, they typically will be restrained and taken to the hospital. The two EMTs were too much for me to fight against. Even more so when a police officer arrived at the scene. Still, I struggled, wriggling my body as much as I could. Sherry kept pace with me as they started carting me out of the house against my will, screaming until I could feel my throat rupture. I wanted time to stand still. As we reached the door frame, I heard the officer ask Sherry to wait. He would have to ask her some questions. That's just how it works. I could only fight so hard. Not hard enough. She stopped walking, and her name scratched against the inside of my neck like nails as I cried for her. Pulling me from the confines of my house, I could hear the officer and Sherry speaking.
Acting really strange.
But then I couldn't. Not like they finished their conversation. Their voices just cut off like someone turned off the TV in the middle of the sentence. It was all too much. Odd how, when the cord finally snapped, that's when I stopped crying. I shut my eyes nice and tight, and suddenly I felt myself plummet to the ground, smacking against the sidewalk. The world was quiet. I could see the street in front of me when I opened my eyes. Turning around, though, just as I knew it'd be. She was gone. The officer, the EMTs, in my entire house, all of it is gone. Just an empty field of grass. As I turned my head, I could see that the houses next to mine had vanished as well. Everything around me turned into an ever-expansive field of green and blue. I had nothing left in me. No tears or troublesome thoughts. Just an encroaching numbness to it. Like I had forgotten my own emotions. More and more was forgotten. Everything faded into nothing. So that's what it all became. The blue skies and green fields that stretched into oblivion gave shape to the very same oblivion. Darkness. That's all it was, until I failed to even comprehend that darkness. I was floating through pure nothingness, unable to even perceive that lack of. The more I floated, the more I could feel the world. I could feel the breeze or the hands being placed on me, but it would all go through me. It was all still there. It was me who slipped away. Just like the table, they could still see me. Thin fingers, I could feel them trying to grab at me. I tried to return their grip, but I was unable to perceive the existence of myself. No arms sprang forward, just the sensation of them. Like one film layer over another. It was all there. I had fallen away. A complete and utter failure of permanence.